I reached Kochi yesterday. It has been a long travel of around 10 hours. It's pretty good. I like the place, lot of greenery. And today, maybe like post the event, I'm also planning to roam around with my family. Yeah, yeah, it is like a great honor to be a Docker captain. So I have been a Docker captain since 2016. So in India, earlier we had three. Right now, I am the only one, and there are around 66 Docker captains all across the globe. It's a great opportunity to basically talk directly to Docker and collaborate with them, writing the blogs, especially conducting the webinars, conducting the meetups. So as a Docker captain, I would say that is a privilege for us to go ahead and get access to the software before it released to the world. And we do get a kind of a privilege to attend all those Docker cons, Docker conferences, which happen every year, mostly every year, one in US and UK. And being a Docker captain, I have spent a lot of time in writing the blogs. I have around 200 plus blogs which I have written in Docker, Kubernetes and cloud. So it's a great ownership, and since it directly comes from the Docker, so it is one way of how you represent yourself to those group of DevOps engineers to whom you want to go ahead and share the knowledge. Yeah, so yeah, it is like it's all about the world of abstraction. If you see earlier when we started with x86 servers, we used to play around with the mainframe and all. Now the industry got shifted slowly to virtual machine. After that, the containers were like gained a kind of a momentum, where people were more talking about how to deploy, how to code, deploy and test this application as soon as possible. And now we are talking about serverless. So I would say like things are getting abstracted. When we talked about containers, it was like a Docker was one of the popular container platform. Today we have the other platforms like Containerd, which is like an open source container runtime. And today people are more talking about the Kubernetes. And if you look at the present scenario, we have a cloud native. When we talk about a cloud native, I think all those ecosystems come into the one umbrella. So I would say that the whole world is moving towards the abstraction layer. When we say cloud native, it covers almost everything: Docker, Kubernetes, and the DevOps tools. So I would say like what I think is the cloud native application is something which the world is talking about. The whole industry is moving towards serverless, the cloud native based applications. So I would say like I do see Docker as a kind of a process which is running in an operating system. When you open all the doors, open all the doors in your room, then most probably it will be insecure. The only thing which you need to really concern about is, and to look into, is how secure your platform is. If you look at the projects like LinuxKit, where it bring up the instances on the remote cloud platform with the services in the read-only format, it means that you are securing your infrastructure. So what do I see is like, say when you are running a container as a root user, that could be one way where you are making your containers insecure. Now today you run it as a rootless. So there are tools and techniques, there are best practices guides which talks about how to secure your containers, and I do strongly believe that one need to follow that before you go ahead and deploy those applications. So the today plan is to start with a kind of a short introduction, like what I have been doing in Bangalore, especially I am the organizer of Docker Bangalore group, where we have around 8,900 members. Pico. This is a small project where I will be talking about Docker, IoT and deep learning, and I'm sure people are going to like it. Why? Because the industry is moving more towards Docker and Kubernetes, and people really want to know how to use Docker and Kubernetes on IoT devices. So Pico is all about how you simplify a real-time analytics using Docker, AWS recognition system on the Raspberry Pi. So that's the plan.
So why IoT need Docker? This could be one of the questions, and there are multiple reasons. First thing is build, ship and run IoT software, because if you want to really build it for your edge computing devices, you can still go ahead and use it. Minimal hardware resource, you can just compare it with how the laptop and how the Raspberry Pi is different. Geographical distribution is something, say if I have a drone which has Raspberry Pi attached, and if I really want to update the firmware, still I can go ahead and do it. Which means that it could be in your warehouse or in your shopping complex. If I want to push a new version of your application which is running as a container, it is very easy to push, right? Docker swarm update, right? And it will go ahead and update the application. So whatever you run inside a container, and if you want to update it, you can do a rolling update. You have high availability feature. Whatever Docker swarm or Kubernetes come up with today, it is basically possible. And not all, but most of the stuffs are possible with this particular Docker. And then limited and sporadic network access. So what happens is, like if you have a server, it might have a different network card, you run a heavy workload on top of it. So these Raspberry Pis, you accept that few of them do fail, okay? And you need a very less, you expect a very less throughput and all those things. So for Docker, since it is very lightweight, it doesn't consume much resources, so you can bring up your application very fast. So this is a very minimalistic, I would say, cluster, the 5-node Docker Swarm cluster running on Raspberry Pi. Docker Swarm is just like a Kubernetes. It is built natively on the Docker engine. So if you install Docker, by default it comes with the Docker Swarm. Since the Kubernetes is kind of an open source, this is something which is integrated directly in the Docker engine. So I do have, if you see, there are 3 cameras here, 2 cameras which is connected to the Raspberry Pi, and through this you just have to go ahead and run Docker Swarm in it. It will set up your manager node and Docker Swarm join to build up the worker node. It is very similar to how the Kubernetes, you join the cluster in the Kubernetes. So this is something which is possible today, okay? And now I am connected to my Raspberry Pi here, okay? So it shows you like this. Maybe let us check the OS running on top of it. So let me do this. Okay, fine. So I have a 1903.4 both server and the client engine which is running on top of it, okay? Now I have built a container which can convert this Raspberry Pi into CCTV camera, and now you might think about, there could be a lot of settings which we need to do, right? Not much. There are 2 settings. Let me show you that. So the first thing which I need to do is run a Raspberry config. Okay, once you do this, there is an option called as interfacing. Under that, camera interface to be enabled, okay, and finish it. Okay. Now the other command is, what you have to do is mod prop. So this is, since it uses a BCM Broadcom processor, so this is the module which has to be loaded. Now let me, I have built a container. I will show you how I built, but I built a container which I am going to run it. Okay, let's see how it works. And once I run this, it should take care of container. If you see, the one container has come up, and can you see it? It's blinking. Yes, it has started blinking. So the command to check whether this particular container is working or not. So if you see here, it is a container which is running and it is exposed on port 8081. You see that? Forget about the lagging part because I haven't done any modification, but using a simple container is something where I can go ahead, and now this is something which I can push it to the cloud too. But as a developer, right, how much time it saves when you do this. This is just an idea like how you can do it. Other than that, I would say even the configuration which I did in the beginning is something, it's a one-time activity. Next time when I run the container, again, you don't need some kind of a modification here. Use it. What I came up with the idea is, say if car enters your apartment, the first thing is it should detect the object is car. And then the second thing, which is basically an object detection. And then the second thing, what you do is you try to match the number plate, which is a text analytics. So object plus text analytics, and that is where we are trying to solve the problem through the projects called Pico. And the whole implementation, yes, uses the cloud services at this point of time, but in 2.0, Pico 2.0, which I am working on, which will use a Jetson Nano, everything can be done in-house, means locally on the Jetson itself. You don't really have to go to the cloud. So let me talk more about it. So the Pico project uses all these technologies: Docker, Raspberry Pi software, Docker Swarm, AWS Lambda recognition, and the Kafka. The whole beauty of this project is this. Just 3 containers. The way I showed you how I converted this Raspberry Pi into CCTV camera. So we have something called as a Pico producer. Okay, this is a producer for Kafka. I have a slide which I am going to talk about. So Kafka is an open source application which basically is basically works on the pub/sub model, where you have a number of producers. Okay, those producers might be producing data. You go ahead and say if you want to do some kind of a video streaming kind of a software. So Kafka best works in that condition where it will ensure that your video frames doesn't get lost. So it has the multiple sources, it has multiple producers, consumers. So in this case, if you see, the consumer is AWS Lambda and AWS recognition system. The camera module captures the video frames, okay, and then send it to Kafka. And this Kafka is running on cloud, or say AWS, Google Cloud, any of the cloud, okay. Now, the moment inside the Kafka, we have a component called as the topic. Once the video frames hits the topic, it triggers AWS Lambda and AWS recognition service. And these are the services which does the deep learning platform. These are a deep learning platform. It will show you, it will detect whether that person is, that object is a person, bottle, or
I'm working with UST Global as a DevOps engineer, and it was a great opportunity to meet a Docker captain today. I was having lots of questions. I discussed with him. I got cleared everything. It was a great opportunity. Thanks to AWS community.
Okay, my name is Amit. I'm working as a DevOps engineer in key value system software in Smart City. It was fun being here, being with the Docker captain. We had a lot of information which was shared, and it was fun. And a lot of new things I learned today. And great thanks to AWS UG Kochi for hosting this event.